I'm on my way to Breathless Reads. I'm in my, actually in my driveway right now, so we're about to go, and I burnt a CD that has Lizzie Radio songs on it, and I know I put her into the Tune In Tuesday the other day, and so I'm excited. We're gonna go see Beth, Revis, and a bunch of my blogger friends, and Mary Lou, and Jessica Spotswood, and so it's gonna be a lot of fun, and so, yeah.
When she discovers other witches, they are telling her you should want to step forward and help other girls like yourself and make the world safer. And she doesn't particularly want to do either. She just wants to figure out what will make her happy. And I think that's something that can resonate with everyone.
Well, in Across the Universe, there's definitely a real power struggle between eldest and elder, and Amy and Orion, and there's definitely a physical power struggle. But I think for each character, and this is something I tried specifically to do, each character also has a very real philosophical power struggle within him and herself, and it's the question of ignorance versus bliss. And each character has to decide for him or herself whether ignorance is better or bliss. I mean, is ignorance and bliss better, or should you face the truth and face the hard truth? And some characters make that decision for others, and I think it's certainly arguable that in that situation, that's the best decision they could have made. And other characters believe that everyone should make up their own mind, and it's something that I explore in both novels, and actually the third one as well. A standalone novel, and it was going to end exactly like the ending you get now. I didn't change the ending at all. It was just going to be a very open-ended, haha, you don't know what happens kind of thing. And my agent was like, oh, wait a minute, everyone will hate you if you do that. So I built upon what I had, and what I have found works really well for me, because I do not plan anything at all. Even though I have these really intricate plots, I don't know what's going to happen. So what I do is I just try to layer in as many details as possible and as many realistic character motivations, even the background characters. I try to layer all of that in so I can bring it in the later novels. And that has helped me, because now that I'm working on the third book, I am bringing in details that were just minor details. I'm like, I need to make these minor details now significant for the third book. So I already have what I need. I just have to figure out how to use it. But it's also kind of hurt me, because there have been things that I did not include or that I cut out of previous drafts that now I'm like, I could use that. So it's a catch-22. I should probably be smart and outline, but I
don't. I've always wanted the series, The Chaos Witch Chronicles, to be a trilogy. That's been in my head since the beginning, and certain points have been plotted out since the beginning. But a lot of the ways that I'm getting there have really changed. I was telling the girls the other night that I wrote an original draft of book 2, and my editor looked at it and said, oh, I love it, I love this and this and this. But the more we talked about it, the more we realized that it wasn't setting things up quite the way we wanted for book 3. So I basically threw it out and I'm starting over, which has been, difficult emotionally. But it's definitely, I think, the best thing, and it's been really interesting learning. I've written books before, but I've never written a trilogy before, and there's definitely a sort of learning curve to it that structurally that I'm still continuing to learn as I go along.
So I get a lot of impassioned emails asking why I write such horrible cliffhangers at the ending of my books. And it is because I don't actually think of my books as a series. I think of it as one long book that happened to be broken into 3 pieces. So unfortunately, I know that. You guys have to wait for each book that comes out.
Yeah, that was kind of weird.
But as much as I can see, I know what that really large plot arc is going to be. I cannot outline for the life of me. I get hives, not literally, but I feel like I would if I try to do anything like outlining. The way that and part of that is because I don't write in chronological order. So I need to write scenes as they inspire me. I think of it as like a jigsaw puzzle where I write the scenes and then figure out how they fit together. I know what the big picture is going to be, So I knew the ending of Blood Rose when I was writing Nightshade at first. So what surprises me are those things that pop up along the way when characters surprise you. And we've been talking a lot about how often it happens that you have a character who appears and you expect them to do one thing and then go away, and then all of a sudden they end up becoming a major character in the series. And you're like, what are you? Where are you going? What are you doing? But it really happens a lot, and that's actually one of my very favorite parts of writing. And so I find that I know what those high and low points are in the books that I need to hit, and then otherwise I just give myself a lot of freedom to write along the way.
When I was younger, I read a lot of epic fantasy, and that was sort of like my starting point for writing. So I've always thought of, I think my writing process has always been in the form of series. I can't imagine writing a standalone just because I read so many books that were series. So with Legend, I knew going in that it was going to be longer than one book, although I didn't know it was going to be a 3-book arc. And for me, the process it's a lot of things that I think that I have control over, but it just ends up turning out completely different. Like I thought I knew what the ending of book 3 was going to be when I started writing Legend, but like halfway through book 2, it like changed on me. So now it causes a lot of panic attacks for me. I love those moments when the characters just sort of take on a life of their own. Like halfway through Legend, there's a twist that happens, but I didn't know that was going to happen until the moment that I typed it out, and I was like, oh my god, you ruined my outline. I was like, I had this whole thing plotted out for the second half of the first book, and then I had to like just chunk it because of the weird organic thing that happened halfway through. And it's exciting, but it's very, very like freaky when it happens sometimes, because and I'll just end up like crying to my pillow. I'm like, oh my god, I have no control over my head. Like, people in my head run me, and I don't have any like powers over them. They just sort of do their own thing. So yeah, so I try to outline, but usually by the time I hit chapter 4 or so, the characters are like off the beaten path. They're like doing they're charging forward in an opposite way, and I sort of have to like chase after them and just follow them wherever they go.
Really a lot of fun to look at all of that, but also etiquette, things like calling and mourning periods and the structure of little New England towns. I did a lot of research, and then, like I said, just sort of shifted things a little. And I think what was fun about it for me was to sort of try to contrast that really lush, sensuous, Victorian kind of lots of colors and fabric and corsets and carriages and gaslights, all these things that seem really romantic, although in practice probably less so, with the harsh realities of the Brotherhood and their restrictions. And I think one of, I don't remember what I was going to say now.
Talk about ripping the corsets off. That'll distract us.
One of the other really fun things. Not ripping corsets
That gets
off.
them every time, right?
I'm sure that would have also been fun to research. Was the gardening. Kate is a really huge gardener, and I am not. Like, I have a distinct black thumb, but my mother is a huge gardener, and so I got to ask her questions, and I also looked online to try to make sure that things aren't blooming at the wrong time. But that was also a big area of research.
Most of my research was figuring out what I wanted for the ship and then why we didn't have it now. So for example, one of the key parts of the first book is cryogenic freezing, which we kind of have now, but we don't have successfully, because every time we try to freeze someone, they turn into freezer burned meat. And the reason for that, the pictures are really fun. Look at some creepy stuff. So the reason why we don't have cryogenic freezing is because ice crystals form in our cells, and they break through the cell walls, and then you die. Yeah. Dude, those are some weird pictures too. So because I'm a science fiction writer, I just kind of stressed the fiction, and so I invented blue goo that like miraculously fixes our cell walls. Like, problem solved. Now we have cryogenic freezing.
All insist that they are real, and they want me to treat them that way. So none of them would be happy for me to say that they're based on people, and for the most part they're not. And the one character who I realized was It was by accident, and I didn't know it until I was well into writing the book, and that's Calla's younger brother, Ansel. I was writing him, I loved him so much, and I felt incredibly close to him, like closer than any of the other characters, even though I loved them all. And I realized, one day I'm like, oh, he's my little brother, because I have a little brother, and we are incredibly close, and my book is dedicated to him. And I just realized, I'm like, Ansel is Garth at 15, and I didn't mean for that to happen, but they just are very similar, but I love it. It makes me really happy, and it makes my brother really happy too, so I'm pretty good with it.
For things in Legend that are based on my real life, I hope this isn't kind of a downer answer, so feel free to laugh if you want to. Okay, so when I was living in China, I was born near Shanghai, but I lived in Beijing up until the age of 5, and then I moved over to the States in New Orleans. And when I was 5, it was the year 1989 in Beijing, so there's Tiananmen Square. And I remember there was like the months leading up to Tiananmen Square, where like for the locals it was sort of like a tourist attraction. My aunt would take me out. Like we lived a few blocks away from the square, so she would take me out and she's like, oh, let's see what the students are doing today. And then like we saw the statue they had erected and everything. So I have memories of that. And I remember the day of the event. The actual massacre happened later at night, but I remember being out in the square that afternoon with my aunt, and I had like 2 popsicles in my hands because it was really warm. But they had already had the tanks out in the streets, and so my aunt was like, okay, I think we need to go home. This doesn't look like it's shaping up to be a very good event. And then later on that night, the massacre happened, and I remember the next day, we didn't have kindergarten, so I was happy at the time, because I was 5, I didn't know any better. But later on in life, when I actually understood the weight of the event, I think it really ingrained itself in me. So there's a scene in Legend actually that is based pretty much exactly on the Tiananmen Square massacre, and that's probably the closest thing in Legend that's actually happened to me in real life.